You're watching this right now because something isn't working. Maybe you don't know exactly what that something is. Maybe you've known for years. But here you are. Not at a desk with a plan, not out there executing, not moving. Here. Watching. Waiting for something. A word, a video, a feeling to finally flip a switch inside you that you've been searching for longer than you're willing to admit.
I'm not gonna pretend I don't know who you are. I do. You're smart enough to know you're capable of more, but you're not doing more. And that gap, that distance between who you are and who you know you could be, that gap is the most exhausting place in the world to live. Welcome to it. Let's start here. Not with motivation, not with quotes, not with a list of things successful people do before 6 a.m. Let's start with the truth about where you actually are right now. You wake up in the morning, and for a moment, just a moment, before the phone, before the noise, before the thoughts rush in, there's a quiet. And in that quiet, there's a version of you that exists, a cleaner version. A version that has things figured out, a version that's building something, moving towards something, living with intention. And then the thoughts come. The to-do list you haven't touched in 3 days, the message you still haven't sent, the plan you made last Monday, or was it last month? That's still sitting in a notes app you open, scroll through, and then close. The version of yourself you imagined on New Year's Eve. Remember them, don't you? That person had such a clear picture of who they were going to become. Where are they now? I'll tell you where they are. They're still in your head, right next to all the other versions of yourself you've promised to become and haven't. That's a crowded place to live. Here's what no one talks about when they talk about being stuck. It's not dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive at your door with sirens. Stuck is quiet. Stuck is the same Tuesday looking exactly like last Tuesday. Stuck is scrolling for 40 minutes and not remembering a single thing you saw. Stuck is starting 3 sentences in your head and finishing none of them. Stuck is looking at someone else's life, their business, their body, their relationship, their freedom. Feeling that specific kind of pain that isn't quite jealousy, isn't quite sadness. It's something else. It's recognition. It's the feeling of seeing what's possible and knowing somewhere deep down that you're capable of it, and then not moving toward it. That feeling doesn't go away. You scroll past it, you sleep past it, you eat past it, you distract yourself past it. But it comes back every single time. Because it's not just a feeling, it's information. Let me describe a day in the life of someone who's stuck. Not a dramatic day, just a normal one. You wake up, you grab your phone before your feet even hit the floor. Not because there's something urgent, just because you can't stand the silence yet. The silence asks too many questions. You scroll. Nothing important. Nothing that changes anything. Just noise. You stay in for 12 minutes, 15, 20. You tell yourself you'll start properly after breakfast. Breakfast happens. Then something else. Then something else. Then it's noon and you haven't done the thing. The thing you know matters. The thing that's been living on that to-do list for a week. And instead of doing it, you reorganize your approach to doing it. You make a new list. You watch a YouTube video about productivity. You feel briefly inspired. You don't act on it. By evening, you're exhausted. Genuinely exhausted. Despite not having done the hard thing. Because here's what they never tell you. Avoiding something takes more energy than doing it. Carrying the weight of what you haven't done is heavier than the thing itself.
You collapse into bed. Tomorrow, you say. Tomorrow I'll be different. And somewhere, quietly, a part of you doesn't quite believe that anymore. Now, let's talk about the other thing. The comparison. Oh God, the comparison. You've been told not to compare yourself to others. You've heard it 100 times. You nod along. You agree in principle. And then you open Instagram or LinkedIn, or you hear that someone from your school, someone you remember as less focused than you, less intelligent than you, less hungry than you, is now running something, building something, living something that looks like everything you said you were going to build. And you feel something crackling inside. Not because you resent them, because you remember you. You remember the version of yourself who had plans, who had fire, who had ideas that you never wrote down because you were going to start properly when the time was right, when you had more resources, more clarity, more confidence, when you were ready. And they just started without being ready, without a perfect plan. And now, they're further along. That's not meant to make you feel small. I'm not saying this to hurt you. I'm saying it because it matters. Because that ache you're feeling right now, reading this, that's a signal. That's your life trying to get your attention. The question is whether you're going to listen. There's something else I need to name. Because if I don't say it, you'll walk away from this feeling seen but not changed. You've felt this before. Inspired, fired up, convinced that this time is different. You've had the moment, the video, the speech, the 3 a.m. conversation with yourself in the dark. The moment where it all crystallized, where you saw it clearly. And then what happened? A few days of momentum. Maybe a week, maybe 2. The habit starts well. The alarm goes off earlier. You feel like a different person. And then life interrupts. You miss one day, then another. Then the whole thing quietly dissolves and you're back where you started. Except now, with an additional layer of evidence that change doesn't stay for you. I need you to sit with that. Not to punish yourself, but because that pattern, that cycle, is the thing we're actually going to talk about in this video. Not the lack of motivation, not the bad habits, not the distraction. The pattern beneath all of it. The invisible architecture of your stuckness. Because until you understand why it keeps happening, all the motivation in the world is just decoration on top of a broken structure. So before I give you anything to do, before we even get to solutions, I need you to stay here a little longer. Because the first step out of the dark is not a leap. It's understanding exactly what kind of dark you're in. Think about the last time you were genuinely happy with your progress. Really think. Not a moment of temporary pleasure. Not a distraction that felt good for an hour. An actual sense of forward movement. Purpose. Alignment. How long ago was that? Weeks? Months? Years? And think about what was different then. Was it the circumstances? The environment? The people around you? Or was it something inside you? A clarity? A commitment? A fire? That existed then and doesn't quite exist now? What happened to it? I'll tell you what happened. Nothing dramatic. Life happened. Small daily defeats. Small daily choices that compounded in the wrong direction. A slow drift, not a sudden fall. You didn't wake up one morning and decide to stop caring. You just started caring about smaller and smaller things. Safer things. Things that couldn't disappoint you. Because the bigger things carried risk. And risk carries pain.
And somewhere along the way, you decided, unconsciously, without ever putting it into words, that it was safer not to try fully than to try and fall short. We're going to talk about that decision, because it's that decision, not your laziness, not your lack of willpower, not your circumstances, that's actually running your life. But first, let me tell you the truth that the motivational industry won't. Let me start with something that's gonna sting. Motivation is a lie. Not the feeling of it, that's real. That surge you get when you watch something powerful, when you read something sharp, when you sit in silence and suddenly feel a clarity about what your life could be, that's real. But the idea that you need motivation to act, that you need to feel inspired before you move, that you should wait for the right mental state, the right energy, the right moment of readiness before you begin, that is a trap. And you've been living in it. High-performing people, the ones actually building things, actually changing their lives, actually doing the work, they don't feel motivated most mornings. They feel the same resistance you feel, the same gravitational pull toward the couch, the same voice saying, maybe later, maybe tomorrow, maybe when this season of life is less chaotic. They feel it. They act anyway. Not because they're made of something different, because they stopped waiting to feel like it. The truth no one tells you is that action comes before motivation, not after. You don't wait to feel like going to the gym. You go to the gym, and then 15 minutes in, the feeling catches up. You don't wait to feel like writing or building or making the call. You write the first terrible sentence. You build the imperfect first version. You make the call with the shaking voice. And the feeling, the real, durable feeling of momentum and purpose, emerges from the action, not before it. You've had this backwards your whole life. Here's another truth. The right time is not coming. I mean that seriously, not as a vague inspirational statement, as a factual description of how reality works. There is no version of your future where your schedule is suddenly clear. There is no week ahead where the obligations evaporate, the stress reduces, the mental fog lifts, and you're finally in the perfect conditions to begin. That week doesn't exist. Every high achiever in history built while their life was also chaotic, built while they were also tired, built while they also had doubt and fear and family problems and financial pressure and every other human experience you're using as a reason to wait. You are not waiting for the right time. You are waiting for certainty. And certainty is a gift that life never gives you before you act, only after. The ground only appears under your feet when you take the step, not before. Let's talk about the story you've been telling, about where you are. Everyone has one. A story about why their life looks the way it does, about why they haven't started yet, about who or what is responsible for the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And I want to be clear, I am not dismissing the real, genuine obstacles that people face. Systems fail people. Circumstances are not equal. Some people have vastly more privilege, access, resource, safety than others. That is real, and it matters. But here's the difficult thing I need you to sit with. The story, your specific story, about your specific circumstances. That story may be accurate, and it may also be the thing keeping you exactly where you are. Both can be true simultaneously. The moment you locate the cause of your stuckness entirely outside yourself, entirely in circumstances, other people, timing, luck, systemic unfairness,
you simultaneously remove your ability to change it. Because if external forces are entirely to blame, then external forces must change before you can move. And you cannot control external forces. So you wait and wait. And slowly, quietly, you become very good at waiting. Both can be true simultaneously. This is not about blame. This is about agency. The most powerful question you can ask yourself right now, not the most comfortable question, the most powerful one, is what can I do with exactly what I have right now? Not in better circumstances, not if things were different, not if I had more time or more money or more support. Right now, what can you do? Most people never ask that question in full volume because the answer is uncomfortable. Because the answer is more than you've been doing. Here's a truth that cuts a little deeper. You are not too busy. I know that's hard to hear. I know your schedule is full. I know the demands on your time are real. I want you to audit, honestly, uncomfortably audit how your hours actually move. How much time goes to content you don't even enjoy, scrolling that leaves you worse, not better, television that you're not fully watching, social media that you open out of reflex, not intention. How much time in a given week evaporates into nothing? Not rest. Rest is valuable. Rest is necessary. I mean the time that leaves you feeling empty rather than restored. That time, it's not busyness. That's avoidance in slow motion. The lie of being busy is that it feels productive. You're moving, you're occupied, there's noise and motion and a sense of things happening. But motion isn't direction. Busy isn't purposeful. You can be extraordinarily busy building someone else's dream, scrolling someone else's life, maintaining a routine that looks like progress, but is actually just expensive idling. And the dangerous thing about that kind of busyness is that it satisfies just enough of your need for activity that the real hunger, the hunger to build, to create, to live with intention, gets quieted without ever getting fed. You're not too busy. You've made other things more urgent. That's not busyness. That's avoidance in slow motion. Let me say something about the one-day mentality. One day I'll travel. One day I'll write the book. One day I'll start the business. One day I'll have the hard conversation. One day I'll get serious about my health. One day I'll live the life I actually want. One day. Here's the problem with one day. One day is not a day of the week. It doesn't appear on any calendar. It has no date attached to it. It's a placeholder, a very comfortable placeholder that allows you to keep your dreams alive without doing anything about them. It lets you be the kind of person who has ambitions without paying the cost of ambitions. And there's a real seduction to that. Because as long as one day is still out there, you haven't failed yet. You haven't tried and fallen short. The dream is still pristine, perfect, untested. But here is the arithmetic of one day. And I need you to really hear this. If you are in your 20s and you keep saying one day, you may reach your 30s still saying it. If you're in your 30s, you may reach your 40s. And somewhere in your 40s or 50s, one day starts to feel less like a promise and more like a loss. The thing that was one day becomes the thing that never was. And that is a particular kind of grief that no motivational video prepares you for. I'm not saying this to scare you. I'm saying it because you are not as far from that arithmetic as you might like to think. And the gap between where you are and where you want to be does not close with time alone. closes with action. Consistent, imperfect, unglamorous action. One more truth, and this one will likely make you uncomfortable. No one is coming. No mentor is arriving who will finally unlock your potential. No circumstance is going to shift so dramatically that it removes all your barriers overnight. No relationship, no job, no city, no body, no amount of money is going to resolve the internal disconnection you've been carrying. External things can support you. They can make the journey easier. They matter. But they cannot do the interior work. That work is yours. Entirely, unfairly, frustratingly, beautifully yours. And here's the thing about that. The moment you accept it, really accept it, not just intellectually, but in your body, in your decisions, something shifts. Not because it becomes easier, because it becomes yours. The responsibility and the power are the same thing. When you stop waiting for someone to save you, you become the person doing the saving. Most people never get there because accepting full responsibility is terrifying. It means no more excuses, no more waiting, no more blaming the circumstances. It means the life you have is substantially a product of the choices you've been making. And that is the most uncomfortable sentence in this video. But it's also the most liberating one. Because if your choices created this, your choices can build something else. Let's go deeper. Because we still haven't gotten to the real thing. The thing underneath all of this. I need to walk into a room with you. A room that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. Because the truth, the real truth about why you're stuck, is not out there in your circumstances. It's not even in your habits. It's in here, in the invisible architecture of who you believe yourself to be. And we need to look at it, not to punish you, not to make you feel broken, but because understanding this is the only thing that actually creates lasting change. Everything else, the habits, the routines, the systems, they're just decoration on top of identity. And if the identity doesn't change, everything else collapses. Every time. That's why you've had moments of momentum that didn't last. That's why the inspiration fades. That's why you've been here before. Not because you're weak, because you keep trying to change your behavior without changing the belief underneath it. Let me show you what I mean. You are not lazy. I want to say that clearly. Laziness, as a character trait, as a fundamental quality of who you are, is almost never what's actually happening. What's actually happening is far more specific and far more understandable. What's actually happening is avoidance. And avoidance is not weakness, it's intelligence. Think about what you're actually avoiding when you procrastinate. It's not the task itself, it's what the task represents. If you avoid writing the business plan, you're not avoiding the writing. You're avoiding the moment when the idea, which has been perfect and pristine and full of potential in your head, becomes something concrete that can be evaluated, judged, found lacking. If you avoid making the application, you're not avoiding the paperwork. You're avoiding the rejection that might follow. If you avoid starting the diet, the workout, the creative project, you're not avoiding the discomfort of the beginning. You're avoiding the discomfort of finding out who you actually are when you're fully committed. Because what if you commit fully and it's not enough? What if you give everything and you still don't get there? At least now, you have an excuse. At least now, you haven't really tried. Not fully, not with everything. So the failure, if it comes, isn't the failure of your full effort. It's just the failure of a partial attempt. And partial attempts are survivable. full efforts that fall short, that's a different kind of pain entirely. Your avoidance isn't laziness, it's armor. Let me talk about fear of success, because it sounds counterintuitive and most people dismiss it. But it's one of the most common and least discussed barriers to human growth. Here's the thing about success, real success, the kind you actually want. It changes your life, not just in the ways you imagine, in all kinds of ways you haven't anticipated. Success changes relationships. Some people will celebrate you, others won't. Some people who are close to you are close to you precisely because you're in similar circumstances. If those circumstances change, the closeness might change. Success changes expectations, your own, other people's. The bar moves upward permanently. The thing you achieve becomes the new baseline. The pressure doesn't reduce, it recalibrates. Success changes identity. The version of yourself you've known, the one who's building towards something, who has potential, who is about to emerge, that version has to be retired when the thing actually happens. And somewhere in you, that version is comfortable, known, safe. This is a deeply human thing. The devil you know, the stuckness you've lived in for years is familiar. It's yours. You know how to navigate it. You've built a whole life around it. The life that awaits you on the other side of full commitment, that life is unknown. And the human psyche is wired to fear the unknown more deeply than it fears the known pain. So it keeps you here, in the familiar discomfort, calling it circumstances, calling it timing, calling it not being ready. When what it actually is the brain protecting you from the terrifying unfamiliarity of becoming someone new. Let's talk about identity, because this is ultimately what everything comes down to. You have a story about who you are. Most of it was written before you were 20 years old. Some of it was written before you were 10. It was written by the reactions of the adults around you, by the feedback you received, explicit and implicit, by the failures that shaped you and the successes that defined you, by the comparisons that were made, the labels that were attached, the roles you were cast in. Maybe you were the responsible one. Maybe you were the one who tried hard but never quite made it. Maybe you were the smart one who never fulfilled their potential. Maybe you were the one who had a difficult time. Whatever the story is, it became you. Not all at once, not consciously, but gradually. You grew into it. You made decisions that confirmed it. You interpreted experiences through its lens. And now, it runs in the background of everything. Here's the brutal part. When you try to change your behavior in ways that conflict with that story, your identity pushes back hard. If your story is, I'm someone who struggles with follow-through, then every time you begin a new project, an invisible counter starts. It counts the days until you confirm the story. And when you do, when you miss a day, when you slip, when the motivation dips, it says, see, this is who you are. This is what you do. Nothing has changed. And you believe it because it's backed by years of evidence. But here's what that story gets wrong. It mistakes pattern for permanence. The fact that you've operated a certain way for years doesn't mean that's who you are. It means that's how you've responded to the conditions of your life with the tools you had available at the time. That's not your essence. That's your history. And history can be rewritten. Not by denying the past, but by making a different present. Now let me name the thing that almost no one talks about: comfort addiction. We live in the most comfortable era in human history. We have immediate access to entertainment, food, warmth, connection, stimulation. Every discomfort can be numbed within seconds. Bored? Here's a screen. Anxious, here's food. Lonely, here's a notification. Uncertain, here's something simple and mindless. This is not a judgment. These are the conditions of modern life, and they are genuinely extraordinary in many ways. But there is a cost. And the cost is your tolerance for difficulty. The things that matter, the things that actually change your life, they require sustained discomfort. Building a skill requires sitting with the frustration of being bad at something for a long time. Building a body requires sitting with physical discomfort repeatedly over months. Building a business requires sitting with uncertainty, rejection, failure, and the grinding monotony of work that doesn't yet produce results. Building a meaningful relationship requires sitting with the discomfort of vulnerability, of being fully seen, of risking rejection. None of these things are available in comfort. And you have been trained by your phone, by your streaming services, by your food environment, by your entire world to exit discomfort within seconds. So when the discomfort of real growth arrives, your system doesn't recognize it as the price of something valuable. It recognizes it as a threat, and it runs. Back to the screen, back to the scroll, back to the comfortable, familiar dark. This isn't a character flaw. It's a deeply conditioned response to an environment that has been designed at enormous cost by incredibly intelligent people to keep your attention captive and your discomfort minimal. You are not weak. You are up against something genuinely powerful. But knowing that doesn't excuse surrendering to it. Let me give you a mirror. Not a flattering one, a clear one. Think about the version of yourself you want to become. The version with the body you want, the career you want, the relationship quality you want, the sense of purpose you want. Now think about the version of yourself that exists right now. What is the gap between them? Not the external gap, the practical distance in terms of actions and habits. The internal gap. What does the future version believe about themselves that the current version doesn't? What does the future version do with discomfort that the current version doesn't? What does the future version say to themselves in the dark moments that the current version doesn't? That gap, that internal gap, that is the real work. Not the habits, not the routines, not the productivity systems. The belief, the self-concept, who you decide to be. Because here's what high performers understand that most people don't. They don't change their behavior and then feel differently about themselves. They decide to feel differently about themselves, and then the behavior follows. The identity precedes the evidence. They act as if they are already the person they intend to become. Not pretending, not lying to themselves, but choosing as an act of will to identify with the direction of travel rather than the current location. That is a radical act, and it's available to you right now. Not next week, not when the circumstances are better, not when you've earned it. Right now. Let me say one more thing before we move forward. The environment you're in is shaping you more than you know. The people around you, the content you consume, the spaces you inhabit, the conversations you have, all of it is constantly, quietly, relentlessly forming your sense of what's normal, what's possible, who you are. If everyone around you treats ambition as arrogance, you will learn to shrink. If everything you consume is designed to keep you passive and scrolling, your capacity for sustained, focused action will atrophy. If the conversations in your life never touch the depth of who you want to become, you will slowly lose access to that depth. You are not just the product of your choices. You are the product of the ecosystem your choices have created. And the ecosystem needs to change. Not eventually, now. You've been here long enough in the understanding in the uncomfortable examination. Now let's talk about what actually happens next. Not what could happen, not what should happen, what you are going to do, starting today. I'm not going to give you a 10-step plan, not because plans don't matter, but because the plan is not what's missing. You know what to do. At some level, some honest, undefended level, you know the direction. You know what you've been avoiding. You know the call you need to make, the thing you need to start, the habit you need to build, the conversation you need to have. You've known for a while. The problem is never knowledge. The problem is the distance between knowing and doing. And that distance is closed with one thing: a decision. Not a motivation, not a feeling. A decision. A real one. Not a vague intention. A specific, dated, committed, non-negotiable decision. This is what I'm going to do. Starting now. Not perfectly, not fully, but starting. Let me tell you something about starting. Starting is the entire game. Not continuing, not finishing. Starting. Because starting is where everything lives. It's where all the friction is. It's the moment of highest resistance, the moment that requires the most and asks the most. Everything after starting is momentum. But starting requires overcoming the static friction, that enormous initial resistance from a standing stop. So here's the first thing. Make the start smaller than it has any right to be. Comically small, embarrassingly small. You want to write? Write one sentence. Not one chapter, not one page, one sentence. You want to exercise? Put on the shoes and step outside the door. That's the goal. Shoes on, door open. You want to build the business? Open a document and write the name at the top. One sentence, shoes on, one name. Because here's what happens once you start. You continue. Not always, not forever, but the act of beginning removes the resistance. The first domino falls, and momentum, once created, is far easier to sustain than to create from nothing. The system is not built in a day. It's built in a moment. The moment you actually begin. Now, let's talk about discipline. Not as punishment. Not as the thing that tortures you into compliance. Discipline as identity. Most people relate to discipline as a force that acts on them from the outside. A schedule that demands things. A rule that restricts them. A regimen that they must obey. And that relationship with discipline is exhausting and unsustainable. Because you can only comply with an external force for so long before you resent it and collapse.
But there's another relationship with discipline entirely.
The relationship where discipline is an expression of who you are. Where doing the thing, the hard thing, the important thing, the inconvenient thing, isn't compliance with an external command. It's alignment with an internal decision. I do this because this is who I am. Because this is what I've decided. Because this is what matters to me. That discipline doesn't feel like punishment. It feels like integrity. And integrity, living in alignment with your stated values and decisions, is one of the most powerful feelings a human being can experience. Not happiness, not pleasure, integrity. The feeling of being someone you respect. That's what you're building toward. Not achievement for its own sake. A relationship with yourself that you can stand behind. Let's talk about small moves, because there's a pervasive cultural myth that transformational change requires transformational action. Grand gestures, dramatic pivots, total overhauls. And that myth is why so many people attempt complete life reinventions, sustain them for 2 weeks, and then swing back harder in the opposite direction. Change is not dramatic. Change is arithmetic. Small, consistent, almost invisible moves that compound over time. 1 degree of change in direction doesn't look like much right now. Over 100 miles, it's the difference between 2 entirely different destinations. So here's what this looks like practically. Not a lifestyle revolution. One thing. What is the one thing, the single most impactful thing you've been avoiding that if you did it consistently for the next 3 months would change the trajectory of your life most significantly? One thing. Not 5, not a list. One. That thing, that's what you work on first. Not everything, not the full transformation. One thing. Daily. Imperfectly. Without waiting to feel like it. Let me talk about the identity shift, because this is where real change lives. I said earlier that the gap between who you are and who you want to be is primarily an identity gap. So here's how you close it. Not by achieving your goals, by deciding who you are before you achieve them.
This sounds abstract, so let me make it concrete. Instead of telling yourself, I'm trying to become someone who exercises regularly, tell yourself, I'm someone who moves their body every day. Instead of, I'm trying to write the book, tell yourself, I'm a writer. Instead of, I'm trying to build the business, tell yourself, I'm an entrepreneur. Feel the resistance that comes up when you say those things. That resistance, that's your old identity protecting itself. That's not you. You're not a writer. You haven't written anything in months. You're not an entrepreneur. Look at your life. And instead of arguing with it, you do something simple. You act in alignment with the new identity. Just once today. Write the sentence. Move the body. Make the contact. One small act that says, this is who I am. And tomorrow, you do it again. Not because you feel like it, because it's who you are. Let me name something about consistency that no one tells you. Consistency is not about never breaking. It's about how fast you recover when you do.
You will miss days. You will have weeks where the system falls apart, where life is genuinely chaotic, and the one thing you committed to gets dropped, where you look up and realize you drifted. That's not failure. That's life. The difference between people who change and people who don't is not that the changers never drift. It's that when they drift, they notice faster, and they return faster. Without drama, without self-punishment, without the grand recommitment speech that burns bright for a day and then vanishes. Just, I drifted. I'm back. The self-punishment cycle is one of the most productivity-destroying patterns there is. You miss one day, you feel bad, you tell yourself you failed, you spiral into guilt. The guilt becomes paralysis. The paralysis becomes another missed day. Now the streak is broken and the story is confirmed, and it's easier to just stop than to restart. That entire sequence is optional. You can interrupt it at any point with one thought. I drifted, I'm back. That's it. No speech, no ceremony, no renewed vow. Just back. Let me talk about your environment, because I raised it earlier and it deserves practical attention. If the people immediately around you don't operate at the level you want to operate at, that matters. Not because they're bad people, not because you need to cut everyone out of your life, but because you cannot sustain growth in isolation from an ecosystem that contracts around it. You need at least one person who takes the work seriously, who operates with intention, who pushes forward even when it's uncomfortable. Someone whose standard of living, not income, not status, but internal standard, challenges yours. If that person doesn't exist in your current life, you need to find them. Not as a shortcut, not as someone who will do the work for you, as a reference point, a proof of concept, an answer to the voice that says this isn't possible for people like me. A person who started where you are and moved. Find that person. Read what they've written. Watch what they've built. Study how they think. Not to copy them, to borrow their belief until you build your own. Let me talk about the content you consume, because you are, in a very real sense, the average of what you consistently feed your mind. And most people feed their minds in ways that are producing exactly the results they say they don't want. Not a lecture about screen time. A simple audit. For 1 week, just 1 week, pay attention to how you feel after each type of content you consume. After you scroll social media, do you feel clearer or more confused? More energized or more depleted? More connected to your own life or more distracted from it? After you watch the thing you watch, do you feel more capable or less? More focused or more numb? After you read, does the thinking that follows feel sharper or murkier? Just notice. Don't judge, don't punish yourself. Just notice. And then make one substitution. One piece of content that depletes you, replaced by one that builds you. One conversation that keeps you where you are, replaced by one that challenges you to move. One substitution, compounding, every day. Now, let me talk about something difficult. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is going to take longer to close than you want it to. This is not pessimism. This is an honest reckoning with time. You may have spent 5, 10, 15 years drifting, compounding in the wrong direction, building habits, patterns, beliefs that point away from what you want. You cannot undo that in a month. You can begin to undo it today. But the full reversal, the full compound interest of consistent forward action, that takes time. And the question is not whether the journey is long. The question is whether you're willing to commit to a direction, even when the results aren't yet visible. Most people stop during what I think of as the invisible period. The period between when you start doing the right things and when the results become visible. It's the most dangerous period because you're doing the work, genuinely, consistently. Nothing looks different yet. And that silence is louder than anything. It asks, is this actually working? Am I wasting my time? Maybe this isn't for me. The answer is keep going. Not blindly. Adjust the approach when needed. Seek feedback. Be honest about what's working. But don't stop because the result hasn't arrived yet. The result is coming. It's compounding in the dark. And when it surfaces, when it finally becomes visible, it will seem sudden. And the people around you will call it overnight success. And you will know exactly how many invisible mornings it cost. Let me tell you about focus. Real focus. The kind that changes things. Not multitasking. Not the juggle of 15 half commitments. The locked in, daily, non-negotiable attention to one direction. You cannot build multiple things at full quality simultaneously. You cannot run a business and a podcast and a creative project and a fitness journey and a relationship and a social life all at peak investment simultaneously. Something will be shortchanged. And usually what gets shortchanged is the most important thing, the deepest work, the long-term thing, the uncomfortable thing. Because the shallow, urgent, visible things always feel more pressing. So you have to choose, not forever, not permanently, for this season. What is the one thing that if you gave it your most serious, most sustained, most undivided attention for the next 12 months, would change everything? Say it, not in your head. Say it out loud. That's your direction. And everything that pulls against that direction, including many good, worthwhile, enjoyable things, is a cost you need to choose whether to pay. Focus is not just choosing what to do. It's choosing what not to do. And not doing it without guilt. Here's the final thing I want to say about action. The goal is not perfection, not the perfect start, not the perfect system, not the perfect version of the thing you're building. The goal is presence. Showing up every day in the direction, imperfectly, honestly, consistently. Perfection is the enemy, not because it's a high standard. High standards are valuable, but because perfection becomes the reason nothing starts, the reason nothing ships, the reason the idea stays in the Notes app forever, getting more elaborate and more untouched. Done is not the enemy of good. The enemy of good is the perfect version that never begins. Your imperfect start is worth 1,000 perfect plans. Let me leave you with this. Not as a conclusion, not as a tidy ending, as a door. Right now, in this moment, this specific moment, after everything this video has said, you are at a threshold. Not a dramatic one, a quiet one. The kind that comes not with a soundtrack, but with a stillness. The kind where no one is watching. No one will applaud you for stepping through it. No one will even know. Just you and the choice. I'm not going to tell you it's going to be easy. It's not. The resistance will come back tomorrow. The voice that says later, not yet, wait. It will return. The old patterns will pull. The comfort will call. The scroll will be there, just a swipe away. And you'll have to choose again and again and again every single day. Not once, not dramatically, quietly, privately, in the ordinary moments that no one photographs and no one celebrates. That's where your life is actually built, in those moments. You don't need to be a different person to begin. You don't need to wait until you're healed, prepared, certain, ready. You need to take one step right now, not tomorrow, not after this video ends and you've thought about it for a while. Now. The only question that remains, the only question that has ever remained, is not whether you're capable. You already know the answer to that. The only question is, are you going to? I want to ask you something. Not a comfortable question. A real one. How many times in your life have you watched something like this? A video, a speech, a book, a 3 a.m. conversation with yourself in the mirror. How many times have you felt exactly this feeling? This sharp clarity, this weight in your chest, this moment where you say to yourself, this time will be different. How many times? And how many times was it actually different? I'm not asking to hurt you. I'm asking because that question is the only real difference between the people who change and the people who don't. Not ability, not circumstances, not timing. That question. Is this time actually different? And what, specifically, is going to make it different? The honest answer? The answer you don't usually say out loud is that nothing will make it different. Except you. Not this video. I don't change your life. These words don't change your life. Inspiration doesn't change lives. Action does. One action. Small. Specific. That you take the moment this video ends. Not in an hour. Not tomorrow morning when you feel more ready. Now. In this minute. Before this feeling cools. Before the noise comes back. Before you open the next app.
Because that is what always happens. The moment ends, and the noise returns. And feelings, even the strongest feelings, dissolve within hours. Not because they weren't real, because feelings are temporary by nature. And life is not built with feelings. It's built with decisions. And a decision is not a feeling. A decision is an act. Let me tell you something no one has told you quite this way. You will not remember this video in a week. The words will fade. The feeling will go. And life will return to looking exactly as it did before. What will not fade is what you do right now, in this exact moment. Because action leaves a mark. Not in the world yet, inside of you. In the way you look at yourself tomorrow morning when you wake up. When you look at someone who moved, or someone who watched another video and returned to the same place. That choice, that small, invisible choice that no one else will see. That is who you actually are. I'm not asking you to change your mind. Imagine you're 90 years old. You're sitting in a chair by a window. The light is coming through. And you have nothing left to do but think. Not plan. Not postpone. Not scroll. Just think about the life you lived. About the mornings you wasted waiting to feel ready. About the version of yourself you kept promising to become. About all the times you stood exactly where you're standing right now. Watching something. Feeling something. Knowing something. And then doing nothing. That 90-year-old version of you, what are they feeling in that chair? Peace? Or the specific, quiet grief of someone who ran out of time before they ran out of excuses? I want you to really sit with that image. Not as a motivational exercise, as a mirror. Because that person in the chair, they are you. Not a distant hypothetical. Not someone else's story. You. Just floating along the same road you're walking right now. And the road doesn't change on its own. The road goes where your feet take you. Every single day. Including today. Here's something I need you to understand about time. Not philosophically. Practically. The years do not feel long while you're living them. They feel long in theory. 5 years sounds like a vast stretch of time when you're standing at the beginning of it. But you know this already. You know how fast the last 5 years went. You know how you blinked and months disappeared. You know how January became December before you finished deciding what you wanted to do with the year. That speed does not slow down. It accelerates. And the coolest thing about time is that it moves at exactly the same pace whether you're building something or standing still. Whether you're becoming someone or staying exactly who you've always been. The clock doesn't reward movement. It doesn't punish stillness. It simply moves. And one day, not a dramatic day, just an ordinary Tuesday, you will look up and realize that the window you thought was wide open has quietly, without announcement, become much
smaller. I'm not saying this to frighten you into action. You need to take a little foundation.